I'm glad you found your way here tonight. Under the covers, your body is quietly trying to give something away. Heat. And somewhere in the dark, without ever deciding to, you slid one bare foot out into the cool air, the way almost everyone does, on almost every night, for reasons nobody ever explained to you. Let a little warmth leave you. Somewhere behind your eyes, cells are reading your temperature falling and taking that as permission to let you go. Welcome to Sleepy Science Facts. Let's follow that warmth out into the dark and see where it takes us. Almost everyone has done this without ever deciding to. Somewhere in the dark, one foot slides out from under the blanket and finds the cool air on the other side. You did not plan it. Nobody taught it to you. It tends to happen in the last few quiet minutes before sleep arrives. Body temperature is not a fixed number. It drifts on a daily rhythm, and it begins to fall in the hour around sleep onset. That small movement of the foot seems to belong to that falling. So underneath everything we look at tonight sits one quiet question. Why does letting one foot into the cold help you cross over at all? Your body was answering it long before you had a word for any of this. The temperature that matters here is not the one on your skin. It is your core temperature, measured deep inside, where your organs live. In the hours around sleep onset, that core value begins the steepest part of its nightly descent. Toward the lowest point it will reach all day. It is a small change by the standards of a thermometer, and an enormous one by the standards of a body that guards this number all day. Nothing goes wrong when it happens. The fall is scheduled, expected, repeated every night of your life. Whatever you thought falling asleep was, a decision, a surrender, a lucky accident, a measurable cooling runs underneath it. Your body has been doing this arithmetic in the dark since before you could count. Your core temperature follows a daily curve, not a flat line. It peaks in the late afternoon and early evening. For most people, somewhere around 7, and reaches its lowest point roughly 2 hours before you would naturally wake, often a little over 97 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a swing of about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit across the day. You do not feel it as heat or cold. You feel it as something else. Alertness in the late afternoon. Heaviness in the small hours. The clock inside you is not only telling time, it is telling temperature, and the two turn out to be the same instruction written twice, in a hand you never learned to read. Nothing about that curve has needed your consent. Researchers who tracked sleep onset against body temperature found something that is easy to miss. Sleep does not arrive most readily at the coldest point of the night. It arrives most readily while the temperature is falling fastest, during the steep part of the curve, not the bottom of it. Studies by Murphy and Campbell in the 1990s found that the timing of sleep onset lined up with the rate of that decline, not with the absolute number. So it is not coldness that invites sleep. It is the act of cooling. The direction matters more than the destination. Somewhere in you, something is watching a slope rather than reading a value. And it has been watching every night you spent certain that nothing was happening. There are only two ways for a body to lower its core temperature. It can make less heat, or it can let more heat go. Your metabolism does ease a little in the evening, nowhere near enough on its own. The larger share comes from release, heat moving outward, off the surface, into whatever is around you. Blood carries warmth from your deep tissues to your skin, and the skin hands it to the air, the sheets, the pillow. This is not a metaphor. It is plumbing, and it means the fall in your core temperature is not something happening only inside you. The room is on the other side of it. The room has been on the other side of it every night you have ever slept. Look at the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. That skin is different from the rest of you. Hairless, thicker, and packed with something called arteriovenous anastomosis. These are direct shortcuts between small arteries and veins. And when they open, warm blood floods the surface and dumps heat fast. They sit in the hairless skin of the palms, the soles, the ears, and the nose. Almost nowhere else on your body carries them. Evolution did not scatter radiators randomly across you. It concentrated them at the ends, where the surface area is generous and the blood runs close to the air. Your hands and feet are not just for holding and walking. They are your body's radiators, put to work every night without asking. In the late 1990s, Kurt Kreutzsche and his colleagues in Switzerland measured skin temperature at two kinds of places at once: the fingers and toes, and the chest and stomach. Then they subtracted one from the other. That difference, the distal to proximal gradient, turned out to predict sleep onset better than any other physiological signal they measured. When the hands and feet grow warmer than the trunk, sleep tends to follow within minutes. Not because warm hands are relaxing, but because warm hands mean heat is leaving. The gradient is a photograph of an open valve. Your body announces sleep with your extremities before your mind has any idea it is coming, and it has never once thought to tell you. This leads to a finding that sounds like a contradiction and is not. Warm feet help you fall asleep faster. In 1999, the same Basel group published a short report in the journal Nature under a plain title: Warm feet promote the rapid onset of sleep. Volunteers who warmed their feet, a foot bath, a bottle, a pair of socks, reached sleep more quickly than those who did not. The warmth on the skin is not fighting the cooling of the core. The warmth on the skin is the cooling of the core, seen from outside. Heat that reaches your feet has already left your center. So the socks are not making you warmer in the way you assumed. They are helping you empty. There is a small ritual almost everyone performs and no one mentions: turning the pillow to reach the cool side. Nobody has run a trial on flipping a pillow, and nobody needs to. The physics is not in dispute. Your head is a serious source of heat. The brain runs at roughly a fifth of your energy budget on a small fraction of your mass. and the scalp carries blood vessels close to the surface. Pressed into a pillow, that heat has nowhere to go, and the fabric warms until it stops accepting more. Flipping the pillow gives it somewhere to go again. A 2-second act, performed half asleep, by people who never once thought about heat transfer. The body knows what it needs before the mind names it. Sit with the shape of this for a moment. Warm feet, cool core. A hot bath before a cold night. A foot in the air while the rest of you stays buried. None of it fits the picture most of us carry. That falling asleep means getting comfortable. And comfortable means warm. What the measurements keep showing is stranger and simpler. Surface warmth is not the opposite of cooling down. It is the visible part of it. So the question sharpens rather than closes. If the warmth you feel at your edges is heat on its way out, what exactly is waiting for it to leave? Something inside is keeping score of this exchange. And it has never once told you so. On any night. In your whole life. As evening comes, your pineal gland begins releasing melatonin. Most people know it as a sleep signal. And it is. But one of the clearest things it does in the body is open the blood vessels in your hands and feet. In laboratory studies, melatonin given in the evening reliably increased distal skin temperature and accelerated the fall of the core. It is less a sedative than a set of instructions to the valves. The hormone you associate with drowsiness spends much of its effort managing heat, which means the sleepiness you feel as darkness settles may be, in part, the sensation of your own body opening its doors, a thing that was happening in you long before anyone had a word for the hormone. Have you noticed that there is a stretch in the early evening when sleep feels almost impossible? Even after a long and flattening day, sleep researchers call it the wake maintenance zone. A window in the hours before your usual bedtime when the drive toward alertness is at its strongest. It sits right where your core temperature is near its daily peak. The curve has not started down yet. Trying to sleep then is trying to fall while still climbing. And no amount of wanting it changes the gradient under you. The hour is not refusing you. The slope simply has not turned. And it turns on its own schedule. Whatever you had planned for the evening, and however early, you decided to be sensible about it. A warm bath or shower, taken 1 to 2 hours before bed, turns out to be unusually well supported for something your grandmother knew. A large review by Hagayeg and colleagues in 2019 pooled the available trials and found that bathing at around 104 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes shortened the time to fall asleep by roughly 10 minutes on average. The timing is the whole trick. Get in too close to bed and you are still warm when you lie down. Get the window right and the bath opens your surface vessels. And afterward, as you step out, your body dumps heat faster than it would have. You are not warming yourself to sleep. You are opening the valves and letting go. There is a second half to this that almost nobody notices, because it happens at the hour you are least likely to remember. Sometime before dawn, the curve reaches its bottom, and a great many people surface briefly and pull the blanket back up. The room has not changed. The night is no colder at 5 than it was at 1. What has changed is you. The number you are defending has arrived at the lowest point it will reach all day. And the same body that was pushing a foot out at 11 now wants covering. It is the same instruction. Read at the other end of the slope. The foot going out and the blanket coming back are not two habits. They are one curve, felt twice. The reading that decides all of this is taken in a very small place. At the front of the hypothalamus, just above the roof of your mouth, sits a patch of tissue called the preoptic area. It is a small piece of brain with an unusual property. Many of its neurons are warm sensitive. They fire faster when the temperature of the blood and tissue around them rises. They are not receiving a report from a thermometer somewhere else. They are the thermometer. And they are also some of the most reliably sleep-active cells in the brain. Two jobs that seem unrelated. Knowing you are warm and making you sleep are done by the same handful of cells in your head. While you listen to this, sit with what that arrangement actually means. In most of your body, sensing and acting are separate. A nerve reports. A muscle responds. In the preoptic area, the cells that detect warmth are the same cells that quiet the arousal systems keeping you awake. When they warm, they fire. When they fire, they release inhibitory signals onto the wake-promoting centers of the brainstem and hypothalamus, and those centers go quiet. There is no committee, no translation step, no decision, anywhere, by anyone. Heat comes in one side and sleepiness comes out the other. The most private thing you do each night begins as a temperature reading, taken in the dark, by cells that have never once asked you anything. Think of a night in a room that is too warm. The air is thick, the sheet clings, and sleep keeps almost happening and then not. Studies of sleep in warm environments, reviewed by Okamoto, Mizuno, and Mizuno, find the same pattern again and again. More time awake, more brief arousals, less slow-wave sleep, less REM. When the surrounding air is nearly as warm as your skin, the heat you are trying to shed has nowhere to go, and it stays. The fitful, unsettled quality of that night is not a mood, and not a state of mind. It is a body still holding something, hour after hour, with the exits closed. The mechanism is dull and entirely physical, and it does not care how the day went. Heat is only half of it. Humidity is the other. Your body has 4 ways to shed warmth: radiation, convection, conduction, and evaporation. And evaporation is the one that saves you when the air itself is already warm. But evaporation needs somewhere for the moisture to go. In humid air, sweat sits on the skin instead of leaving it, and the last route out closes. This is why 80 degrees in a dry room and 80 degrees in a damp one are not the same night at all, and why the thermometer keeps lying to you about which nights will be bearable. The number on the thermostat was never the whole story. Your body is reading whether the room will take what you have to give. Something in you stands down when REM sleep begins. Your body largely stops defending its temperature. Shivering fades. Sweating is suppressed. The thermoregulatory reflexes that have guarded you every waking second of your life go offline. And for those minutes, you drift toward the temperature of your surroundings, the way a lizard does. In a comfortable room, this costs you nothing at all. The drift is small and invisible. In a room that is too hot, it means the part of the night given to dreaming is spent without defenses in a place that is already pressing on you. Whatever the dreams do with that, they are doing it in every sleeper on your street tonight, unguarded in exactly the same way. When people talk about the ideal bedroom, they usually land somewhere around 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 15 to 19 Celsius. But that number describes the room, not the place you actually sleep. Under the covers, in what researchers call the bed microclimate, the air against your skin sits far higher, close to the range where a resting, uncovered body neither struggles to warm nor works to cool. You are not sleeping in the room at all. You are sleeping in a small warm pocket you built yourself, with the room outside it. So the cold room is not there to make you cold. It is there so the pocket has somewhere to drain. You have been engineering a gradient every night without calling it that. At some point in the night, you throw the covers off. You have no memory of it. Small children do it constantly, and so do sleeping animals, curling tight when cool, sprawling open when warm, all of it below any level of awareness. These are called thermoregulatory behaviors, and they continue through sleep because the systems that run them never fully clock out. Your posture in bed is not random. Arms out, blanket half off, one leg free. Each of these is an adjustment, made in the dark, by a body still negotiating. You are not a passenger in that bed. Some part of you stayed awake enough to keep bargaining with the room on your behalf, and it has never once sent you the notes. Von Sommeren and Rayman, working in the Netherlands, tried something delicate. Using temperature-controlled suits, they warmed the skin of sleeping people by less than 1 degree Fahrenheit. Too small to feel. Far too small to wake anyone. Sleep deepened anyway. Time spent in slow-wave sleep increased. And in older adults and people with insomnia, nighttime awakenings dropped. A change beneath the threshold of sensation reached down and altered the architecture of the night. Your conscious experience of comfort and the signal your brain is actually reading are not the same thing. And they were never the same thing. Below you're noticing, in a language you have never heard. Your skin has been talking to your hypothalamus your whole life. Cold hands and cold feet at bedtime are one of the more consistent predictors of a long, restless wait for sleep. It is a strange thing to have measured, because it runs so hard against intuition. The person lying there does not feel cold in any way they would think to report. They feel ordinary. They feel fine. They simply do not fall, hour after hour. in a bed that looks exactly like everyone else's bed. The feet are not cold because the person is failing to relax. The feet are cold because the valves have not opened, and the heat is still where it started. Which means the cold you have been reaching for in the dark was never the point. The point was the leaving. This reframes the blanket entirely. A blanket is not a heater. It has no warmth of its own. It is an insulator, a wall that slows the passage of heat from your body to the room. Under it, you build a small climate, and the warmer that pocket gets, the less heat your core can release into it. The foot outside the blanket is not seeking cold for its own sake. It is a deliberate opening in the wall, placed at the one spot on your body most densely equipped to release heat, exactly when your core most needs to fall. Nobody designed this. Nobody explained it. And 100,000 years of bodies solved it anyway, in the dark, without once writing it down. So the picture settles into something like this. Every night, your core temperature falls. It falls not by making less heat, but by releasing it through hands, feet, and face, through vessels that melatonin helps open, into a room that must be willing to receive it. Deep in the front of your hypothalamus, a small cluster of warm, sensitive cells sits watching. And what it does with that reading is not merely to note it, but to act on it. That is where the rest of tonight is heading. The foot out of the blanket was never a quirk, and it was never a habit you picked up. It was your body reaching for something it has always known how to ask for. If these hours are useful to you, subscribing helps others find them on the nights they need them. Nothing more is needed from you now. Stay with us. The next stretch goes further in. Right now, without any effort from you. Warmth is moving toward the surface of your hands and your feet. The same slow opening you have just been hearing about. Feel it or not, it is underway. Somewhere behind your eyes, a small patch of cells is reading that warmth as it arrives, deciding something on your behalf. What that reading does, what it switches, what it quiets, is where we go from here. Somewhere behind the bridge of your nose. A piece of tissue, smaller than a pea, decides whether you sleep tonight. In the years around 1917, the neurologist Konstantin von Economo studied victims of an encephalitis epidemic and noticed a pattern in their brains. Patients whose damage sat toward the front of the hypothalamus could barely sleep at all. Patients damaged further back could barely stay awake. He proposed that sleep had an address. Animal work over the following decades confirmed it. Injure the preoptic area, and sleep itself begins to fail. He was right roughly 50 years before anyone had the tools to show it. Working from ruined tissue and careful notes. The preoptic area does something unusual for a piece of brain. It feels temperature directly. In the laboratory, warming that tissue by a single degree makes a subset of its neurons, the warm, sensitive ones, fire faster. Cool it, and they fall quiet. But the interesting part sits beside them. Other neurons in the same patch fire at a steady rate regardless of temperature. And the standard model in the field holds that the set point is not a number stored anywhere. It is the point where those two firing rates cross. Change the slope of the warm sensitive cells, and the crossing moves. Your thermostat has no dial. It has an argument, and the answer is wherever the argument balances. Within that region sit two clusters worth knowing by name: the median preoptic nucleus and the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus. In 1996, a team led by Jonathan Sherin used a marker of recent neural activity to show that ventrolateral preoptic cells switch on during sleep and stay dark during waking. It was one of those results that reorganizes a field quietly, because it turns sleep from a fading into an action. What those cells do is inhibit. They release GABA and a peptide called galanin, and they aim those signals downward, onto the cells that hold the lights on. Falling asleep is not something added to you. It is a small group of cells turning the waking systems down. The arousal systems push back. They send inhibitory signals of their own up onto the preoptic sleep cells, which means the two sides are wired directly against each other, each one working to silence the other. In 2001, Clifford Saper and colleagues described this arrangement as a flip-flop switch, borrowing the term from electronics, because it has the same useful property. It refuses the middle. Nudge it, and it snaps fully into one state and holds there. That is why sleep tends to arrive less like a dimmer sliding down and more like a threshold quietly crossed. Nobody catches the moment. Not once. In any laboratory. Has anyone managed to find the middle of it? A switch built that way needs something to hold it steady, or it would chatter. In 1998, two groups working independently described a peptide made by neurons in the lateral hypothalamus. One called it orexin, the other hypocretin, and the field has used both names since. Those cells do not so much wake you as stabilize whichever state you are already in, leaning their weight on the arousal side of the switch. Take them away, and the damping goes with them. This is what happens in narcolepsy, where a person can drop out of waking without warning and out of sleep just as easily. The preoptic cells, reading your temperature, send inhibitory signals to these neurons, among others. In 1982, the Swiss researcher Alexander Borbély described sleep as the meeting of two independent processes. One is homeostatic. The longer you stay awake, the more sleep pressure accumulates, tracked in part by adenosine gathering in the brain. The other is circadian, a clock-driven rhythm that opens and closes a gate regardless of how tired you happen to be. Neither one explains a night by itself. Sleep comes when the pressure is high and the clock's gate stands open, which is why you can be exhausted at noon and stay stubbornly awake, then clear-headed at midnight and go under anyway. Two systems, negotiating, without ever consulting you or explaining the result. At sleep onset, the crossing point itself moves. The preoptic area does not merely notice that you are cooling. It lowers the temperature it has been defending all day, and then the body goes about reaching the new target. The response is exactly what any thermostat would produce when the target drops. Stop generating. Start releasing. Shivering thresholds fall. Heat production eases. The whole machine begins running toward a lower number, quietly, without instruction from you. Nothing has gone wrong. The body is not losing heat by accident on those nights. It is spending it, deliberately, against a target it revised downward while you were reading or talking or thinking about tomorrow. The pressure Borbeli described has a chemical face, and where it lands turns out to matter. Through every waking hour, adenosine accumulates in parts of the brain. Work in the sleep literature places some of its sleep-promoting action right at the preoptic area and the basal forebrain nearby, acting through receptors called A1 and A2A, and activating A2A in that neighborhood switches the sleep-active cells on. Caffeine works by sitting in those receptors without triggering them, which is why a cup at 4 in the afternoon does not really make you alert. It hides how tired you already are. The pressure keeps building underneath. Your sleep debt and your thermostat are being read in the same small room. The two clusters do not fire on the same schedule, and the difference is quietly telling. Recordings from the median preoptic nucleus find cells that begin ramping up their firing before sleep arrives. During that drowsy stretch, when you are still technically awake, and the ramp appears to track how long you have been awake. The ventrolateral group behaves differently. It fires once sleep is already underway. So one of them looks like a build-up and the other like a state. Something in there is not waiting for you to lie down and give permission. It has been counting the hours since you woke, and it starts leaning on the switch before you have decided anything at all. One clock writes both halves of tonight. Above the point where your optic nerves cross sits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it does not talk to your sleep switch directly. Its signals pass through relays close by, a small zone just above it, then the dorsomedial hypothalamus, and from there the same clock output splits. One branch reaches the sleep-promoting preoptic cells. Another reaches the arousal neurons. Another feeds the machinery that sets your temperature. That is why the temperature curve and the sleep gate line up so exactly, night after night, without drifting apart. They are not two rhythms that happen to agree. They are one instruction, delivered down parallel wires. Your skin reports upward, and the route has now been traced. Thermoceptors in the surface of your hands and feet send their readings into the spinal cord, up through a relay in the brainstem called the lateral parabrachial nucleus, and from there into the median preoptic nucleus, the same tissue that is reading the temperature of your blood. So the preoptic area is not only feeling its own warmth, it is being told continuously what the far ends of you are doing. Which is why warming a person's skin by an amount far too small to notice can still reach the switch. The message does not need to be loud. It only needs to arrive on the right wire. There is one arousal system you have already met without knowing it. Deep at the back of the hypothalamus sits the tuberomamillary nucleus, and it is the brain's only source of histamine. the same molecule your immune system throws around at the surface for something else entirely. Those cells fire steadily through waking, slow down in non-REM sleep, and go almost silent in REM. They are among the loudest of the systems the preoptic cells quiet down. And this is why an old antihistamine, taken for a rash or a spring morning, has you heavy-lidded by noon. It crosses into the brain and blocks the very signal that was holding the lights on. Underneath all of it are the molecular thermometers. In the membranes of your sensory nerve endings sit proteins from a family called TRP channels, and each one opens within a particular band of temperature. One family member answers to cool, another to warmth, another to genuine heat. They are the reason menthol feels cold on skin whose temperature has not changed at all, and chili feels hot with no heat present anywhere. Both molecules simply open a channel that temperature would otherwise have opened. The work that identified them earned a Nobel Prize in 2021. Every reading in this entire system starts there, at a pore in a membrane that is either open or shut. Not all of your heat is a byproduct of work. Between the shoulder blades and along the neck sit deposits of brown adipose tissue, fat whose cells are crowded with mitochondria and carry a protein called UCP1, which lets them burn fuel into heat rather than store it. For decades, it was assumed this tissue vanished after infancy. Then, imaging studies published in 2009 found it alive and active in adults, switching on in the cold. It is a furnace, and there are early signs it may keep time as well, running warmer in the hours you spend awake, though that part is still argued over. The furnace and the vents are rarely wide open at once. The organ with the heat problem is the one making the decision. Your brain is a small fraction of your mass and burns something close to a fifth of your energy. And all of that work ends, eventually, as heat that has to leave. Recordings of brain temperature in animals and in people being monitored for other reasons find that it does not hold steady across a night. It falls during non-REM sleep, the deepest stretches falling furthest, and it climbs again during REM. Whatever else sleep is doing in there, the tissue doing it is cooler while it does it. The night has been assembling towards something, and this is the first place its outline shows. Let your attention rest for a moment on wherever the air is touching your skin, the coolest edge of you, whatever it happens to be tonight. Maybe it is a hand outside the cover. Maybe it is your face. Maybe it is one foot you left out without meaning to. You do not have to find it exactly, and you do not have to keep track of it. It is already being read, without any help from you, and nothing about it needs adjusting. There is nowhere any of this has to get to. Let the weight of you settle a little further into whatever is holding it, and let the reading take care of itself. You have probably blamed yourself for a bad night in a hot room. Look instead at what the deepest stage requires. Slow-wave sleep is the stretch where the defended temperature sits lowest and heat loss runs highest. The most thermally expensive thing your night does. A room that will not take your heat is a room where the condition for that stage is not met, and the brain does not enter it on faith. In sleep laboratory studies of ambient heat, as room temperature climbs past the comfortable range, wakefulness increases and slow-wave sleep shrinks. In healthy sleepers, with nothing wrong with them, the stage was never withheld from you. It was withheld from the room. Here is where it turns strange. Warm skin helps you sleep. A hot room does the opposite. Both are warmth. Both arrive at the same skin. And they mean opposite things. Which sounds like the science contradicting itself until you look at which direction the heat is traveling. Warm skin means blood is moving outward, carrying heat away from the core. The warmth you feel is heat in transit, leaving. A hot room means the heat arrives at the skin and stops, because the air outside it is already full. The same sensation, and one question decides everything. Is your core still able to fall? Your body knows the difference, even when you cannot name it. A question sits under all of this that nobody has closed. Why would the brain give this up at all? That REM is the one stage where the thermal defenses stand down, is settled. Why it happens is not. The circuits that run shivering and sweating sit in the brainstem. And during REM, the same suppression that takes the tone out of your muscles appears to reach them as well. The thermostat caught in a shutdown aimed elsewhere. Others argue the surrender buys something. The machinery is expensive, and REM is where the brain spends its budget elsewhere. Both accounts are still live. What is not in question is the cost. For those minutes, the room decides. Now put those two facts side by side, and the hot night starts to explain itself. If REM sleep is the one stage where your defenses stand down, then REM sleep is the stage a hot room can most easily take from you. That is exactly what the studies show. Heat exposure reduces REM sleep, and it does so more sharply as the load increases. Your brain will not hand over its thermostat to a room that is already too warm. So it does the protective thing. It stays shallower, keeps the guards awake, and postpones the stage that requires surrender. The dreaming is not lost carelessly, and not through any failure of yours. It is withheld. Heat does not simply make sleep shorter. It makes it broken. The recordings show more awakenings, more shifts up into lighter stages, more of that granular, sandy quality of a night spent surfacing again and again. You may not remember most of these arousals. They happen faster than memory forms. But you feel their sum in the morning as a tiredness that 8 hours in bed cannot explain. And the mismatch is the whole problem. The clock says you slept. The recording says you kept coming up for air, dozens of times, and went back under before you could notice. Between those two accounts sits every morning you have ever tried to explain to somebody and given up on. And then there is humidity, which costs us more than it would cost almost anything with fur. Humans took an unusual bet. We shed most of our hair, packed the skin with millions of eccrine sweat glands, and built our entire heat strategy around evaporation. Enough of it that a person can keep moving through an African afternoon at an hour when most animals must stop and find shade. The bet pays out only if the air will take the water. In humid air, it will not. The sweat sits there doing nothing, and the strategy we traded our fur for stops working. Sleep studies that separate heat from humidity find the humid night is reliably the harder one, which explains the small mercy of a fan. A fan does not lower the temperature of your room. It moves air. But moving air does two things your still bedroom cannot. It carries away the humid envelope hovering against your skin, letting evaporation restart. And it strips off the warm layer your body has been building around itself all night. An open window can do the same when the outside air is cooler and drier. It is not comfort exactly, and it is not really cooling either. It is a reopened exit. What the fan gives back is the possibility of the thing your brain has been waiting for all along, and could not do alone. The question we began with has quietly changed shape. Watch what a body does when the room refuses it. The priority order is not what anyone would guess. Faced with a night it cannot cool in, the body does not sacrifice temperature to protect sleep. It sacrifices sleep to protect temperature. The thermal system outranks the sleep system, and has for as long as there have been mammals. The temperature has to be right for anything else to continue at all. So the restlessness was never the sleep system failing. It was the sleep system overruled by something older and far less negotiable. You have not been fighting your restlessness. You have been searching all night for an exit. It may also explain the dreams. When heat fragments the night, the arousals do not fall evenly. They interrupt sleep in the second half, when REM periods are longest, the stretch where the sleeping brain is least able to defend its own temperature. Waking directly out of REM is the surest way to remember a dream, and to remember it whole and vivid and strange. So the chaotic, overheated dreams of a summer night are likely not a message from your subconscious, and not a verdict on anything you did that day. They are what dreaming looks like when a body keeps having to surface to save itself. So the discomfort has a reason, and the reason is old. Behind the tossing, behind the leg thrown into the open air, behind the pillow flipped for the cool side, is a nervous system running a calculation it has run in every human body for 100,000 years. Can I release this heat or not? What feels like agitation is search behavior. What feels like you failing at rest is a system trying to complete a step. Every restless sleeper in every warm room tonight is doing the same arithmetic, in the same wordless way, and none of them are doing it wrong. You have just heard that the fidgeting was never disorder. It was a body hunting for a way to let something go. And there may be a memory in you of a night like that. The sheet kicked off, the strange half-dreams, the sense that the room itself was pressing in. Notice, right now, whether any of that search is still running. In your jaw, your shoulders, the hand that keeps moving. Nothing here has to be solved. Let the warmth you are carrying have somewhere to drift, and let the rest of the night take it from you slowly. What comes next follows the heat as it leaves. A newborn arrives into the world unable to do the thing you did tonight without thinking. Babies barely shiver. Their bodies are small, and their surface area is large compared to their mass. So heat leaves them quickly in cool air and builds in them quickly in warm air. What they have instead is the brown fat from earlier tonight, layered across the upper back and around the shoulders. The furnace, running before the vents ever learned to open. Every one of us began this way, with a thermostat still being wired, borrowing the room's temperature because we could not yet argue with it. The daily temperature rhythm you carry now was not there at birth. In the first weeks of life, core temperature moves without a clear day and night curve, and the rhythm assembles gradually over the first months as the clock in the hypothalamus links to light and feeding. Researchers who track infants find something quietly moving. The emergence of that temperature curve arrives alongside the consolidation of night sleep. The long stretches parents wait for do not simply appear. They arrive when the body first learns to fall. A small internal evening, showing up on schedule. This is why pediatric guidance keeps returning to one plain instruction. Do not overheat the baby. The American Academy of Pediatrics advises dressing an infant in no more than one layer beyond what an adult finds comfortable, and keeping the head uncovered during sleep. The reasoning follows the same machinery running in you. An infant who cannot shed heat cannot regulate the night. The instinct that slid your foot into the cool air is one they do not yet have. Somebody has to make the room for them, until the day their own body learns how to ask. Put a newborn bare-chested against a parent's skin, and the pair behave like one thermal system. In kangaroo care, practiced in hospitals across the world, the infant's temperature stabilizes, breathing steadies, and sleep grows more organized. Some studies report that the parent's chest warms or cools slightly in response to the baby resting on it, though the size of that effect is still debated. What is not debated is the direction of the trade. Warmth moves between two bodies, and the smaller one settles. The oldest thermostat we have ever used is another person. Once a month, in bodies that cycle, the whole system is nudged upward. After ovulation, rising progesterone lifts core temperature by roughly 0.5 degree to 1 degree Fahrenheit and holds it there through the luteal phase. It is a small shift with a real cost. The set point runs higher. Heat leaves less readily, and studies of the luteal phase report lighter, more broken sleep, and more reports of restlessness. Nothing has gone wrong on those nights. The room simply has more heat to take, and the body is slower to hand it over. In menopause, this thermal negotiation becomes loud. The physiologist Robert Friedman spent decades tracing hot flashes to their source and described a narrowed thermoneutral zone, the comfortable band between sweating and shivering, shrinking until it is barely a band at all. A rise in core temperature, far too small to notice. One that would pass unremarked in another body, now crosses the line and triggers the full response. Vasodilation, flushing, sweating. The thermostat has not broken. Its tolerances have tightened, and a body that once had room to drift no longer does. At night, this collides with sleep directly. Vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes and night sweats, are among the most common reasons women in the menopausal transition report waking. And studies consistently find insomnia complaints rising through those years. The pattern makes sense from inside the mechanism. Sleep requires a falling core. A flash is heat surging and then dumping in a rush, with the arousal riding along on top of it. Millions of people are awake right now for exactly this reason. In the dark, throwing back a blanket they only just pulled up. Consider what a fever really is. When you shiver under blankets in a warm room, the room has not gotten colder. Your set point has moved up. Immune signals push the preoptic thermostat to defend a higher number, and every reading below it now registers as cold. So you shiver, your blood vessels close, and you pile on covers to reach a target your own brain has raised. The chill you feel is not the illness. It is the same thermostat that lets you sleep, working faithfully toward a different instruction. There is a deeper link there. When you are sick, you do not just feel like sleeping. You sleep differently. Work by James Kruger and others showed that immune signaling molecules, among them interleukin-1 and tumor necrosis factor, increase non-REM sleep, and they act on the same preoptic and anterior hypothalamic tissue that reads your temperature. Fever and deep sleep are not neighbors by accident. They are run by overlapping cells, which is why illness sends you to bed with a body that is both hotter and heavier than it was this morning. Now follow the same rhythm into later life. Studies of older adults consistently find the core temperature curve flattening, the peak lower, the trough shallower, the whole wave losing height, and often shifting earlier. So evening sleepiness arrives sooner and the night ends before it was meant to. The rhythm has not stopped. Its amplitude has faded. If sleep rides the falling edge of that curve, then a flatter curve offers a smaller edge to ride, and the drop that once carried you down now barely tilts. Older bodies also grow slower at the handoff itself. The distal vessels in the hands and feet open less readily. Sweat glands thin, and the skin's response to heat loses some of its speed. So an older person often lies down with cold feet and a core that will not fall, holding the heat inside, unable to root it outward to the surface where it could leave. It looks like insomnia from the outside, and it is scored as insomnia in the clinic. Underneath, it may be a vent that no longer opens all the way. Step outside the modern bedroom entirely. In 2015, Jerome Siegel's group, with Gandhi Yetish leading, published measurements from 3 pre-industrial societies who live without electric light: the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia. Sleep did not begin at sunset. It began hours later, and the timing tracked falling ambient temperature far more closely than it tracked darkness. These groups woke near the coldest hour before dawn. No blankets to slide a foot out of. The same fall, arranged by the night instead of by hand. Look at how those nights are actually built. People sleep near a low fire or in simple shelters, with little in the way of insulating bedding, and the air around them cools steadily from dusk until first light. Their bodies fall with the environment rather than against it. There is no separation between the room's temperature and the body's, and the sleep that results is not fragile. It is the arrangement our physiology was assembled inside, long before anyone thought to build a wall between the night air and the sleeper. What happens when the night stops cooling? In 2017, Nick Obradovich and colleagues matched sleep reports from more than 765,000 people in the United States against nightly temperature records. Warmer than normal nights produced more nights of insufficient sleep, and the effect fell hardest on two groups: older adults and people with lower incomes. That pattern names the mechanism plainly. Blunted rhythms and no air conditioning are the same problem seen twice. A body that needs to shed heat, and a night that will not take it. Before air conditioning, hot places did not fight this. They built around it. Across South Asia and the Middle East, families carried bedding onto flat rooftops to sleep under open sky, where heat radiated upward all night. Courtyards, shaded terraces, thick walls that release warmth slowly, an afternoon rest when the sun sits highest. None of this is folklore about laziness. It is architecture written by the same requirement running under your blanket. The cultures that slept well in the heat had already answered the question your foot is answering tonight. The furniture follows. A hammock hangs the sleeper in moving air on every side, which is exactly what a humid climate calls for. A Japanese futon lies on tatami rather than sealing into a thick mattress. Across Southeast Asia, a long bolster, a bamboo or cotton hugging pillow, is placed between the knees and arms. Whatever anyone intended by it, the effect is geometry. It keeps limb from touching limb, so heat has a path out. We spent centuries designing our beds around one silent requirement, without ever writing it down. And then there is the other body in the bed. A resting adult gives off somewhere near 70 to 100 watts of heat, roughly a bright old light bulb, running all night, a few inches away. Two sleepers share a warmer microclimate than either would build alone. In cold places, that has always been an advantage, and bed sharing across families and generations was ordinary for most of human history. Comfort and thermal load are the same variable here. What keeps you close is also what makes you push the blanket down at 2 in the morning. Researchers have begun testing whether we can help the handoff along. Small trials of temperature-controlled mattresses and water-perfused pads, surfaces that pull heat away from the skin, or warm the extremities on a schedule, have reported gains in slow-wave sleep and shorter time to fall asleep. In older adults especially. The studies are small, and the field is young enough that the numbers should be held loosely. But the direction is consistent, and it points where everything else in this night has pointed. Manage the heat, and sleep follows. Watch any animal choose a sleeping posture, and you are watching arithmetic. A cold dog curls nose to tail, tucking the thin furred belly inward and shrinking the surface it offers to the air. A warm one sprawls flat on the coolest floor it can find, spreading itself as wide as it goes. Cats do it. Foxes do it. And so do you. Pulling into a knot on a cold night. Opening into a starfish on a hot one. Nobody decides this. It is surface area, solved in the dark. Some animals take the falling core much further than we ever do. An Arctic ground squirrel in hibernation lets its body temperature drop to around the freezing point of water. In Brian Barnes's measurements, even slightly below it, while its heart slows to a few beats per minute. This is not the thermostat failing. It is the set point deliberately lowered, defended at a new value for weeks. Your version is smaller by an unimaginable margin. It is the same instruction, turned down. The detail that turns hibernation inside out is what the animal spends its winter fuel on. Deep in a hibernation bout, the brain is too cold to produce normal sleep. So ground squirrels periodically warm themselves back up. An expensive act, burning much of what they stored for the season. And in 1991, Serge Darn, Brian Barnes and Ian Strijkstra found what the expense buys. They sleep. They come part way out of the cold in order to have real non-REM sleep, then sink again. Sleep is worth thawing for. It has to happen inside a temperature the brain can work in. On a smaller scale, this happens nightly. Hummingbirds burn fuel at a rate almost nothing else their size can sustain, and cannot carry enough of it through the dark. So each night, many species enter torpor, body temperature falling steeply, metabolism dropping to a fraction of its daytime rate. The bird still on a branch until dawn warms it back. Measurements in high-altitude Andean species have found body temperatures near a few degrees above freezing. To carry the dark, the smallest warm bodies on Earth agree to stop being warm. Set all of it side by side. The squirrel thawing to sleep, the hummingbird surrendering the night, the sleeping human whose brain will not go deep until heat is moving out. And a proposal from the sleep literature starts to look less strange. Researchers including Ralph Berger and Nathan Phillips argued that sleep and torpor are relatives, both built around energy and heat rather than layered on afterward. Which raises a question the whole night has been circling toward. If the brain is this fastidious about where its heat is going, maybe the heat was never a side effect of sleep at all. The rest of the animal world arranges its life around that possibility. Desert mammals are not nocturnal for the darkness. They are nocturnal for the temperature, and they sleep out the day in burrows a few feet down, where the soil holds a cool the surface never sees. Birds roost where the air moves. Bats hang in caves whose temperature barely shifts across the year. Every one of them chose a place before sleeping, not for safety alone, but for a room that would accept what their body needed to release. Whatever the climate outside, the air trapped against a sleeper's skin settles near the mid-80s Fahrenheit. Textile researchers have measured it in the Arctic and in the tropics and found the same small envelope, built out of whatever bedding that culture happens to have, and then a way for heat to leave it. Here is what the night has been assembling, piece by piece. The brain does not cool because it slept. It is not permitted to sleep until the heat inside it has been given somewhere to go. Not a preference of the body. A precondition of the night. Let the warmth at the edges of you go where it is already, out through the palms, the soles, the 1 foot you left in the cool air. Nothing about this needs your attention. It has been running since long before you had a name for it. In every body that has ever slept. In every room that ever agreed to take the heat. You do not have to make the night colder. You only have to let it be given away. Something in what you have heard tonight is almost finished saying itself. The plain answer to the thing you have done your whole life without deciding to is this. The sole of your foot is one of the few surfaces on you built to give heat away. And a blanket is a wall that stops heat from leaving. Sliding 1 foot out opens that wall at precisely the spot where the radiator sits. Your core needed to fall, and you made it a door. Nobody worked this out. Nearly everyone does it. That skin has a name, if you want it. Glabrous. What matters is the ratio. It covers a modest share of your body. Yet, under the right signal, it can carry a share of your heat loss far out of proportion to its size. The reason is what lies beneath it. Those direct artery-to-vein shunts, wide open, moving warm blood close to the air. Small patches. Enormous throughput. You were issued them at birth and never told. This explains something you may never have questioned. An elbow out from under the covers does very little. A foot out changes the night. Ordinary skin, with hair and capillary beds, releases heat slowly and stubbornly. Glabrous skin releases it in a rush when the shunts open. Your body, drifting and half asleep, keeps choosing the foot, not the knee, not the shoulder. It goes to the equipment. Something in you knows the floor plan of your own body better than you ever have. Those shunts do not open by themselves. They are held shut by a steady stream of signals from the sympathetic nervous system, the same branch that manages alertness and readiness. Opening them is mostly a matter of that grip letting go. Vasodilation at your hands and feet is less an action than a release, the withdrawal of a tension that was there all day. Your heat leaves you when your body stops holding it in. So does a great deal else. Notice what the foot really is. Not a plea for cold. A valve. Push it further out and more heat leaves. Pull it back and less does. Half out, and you have found a setting. All night, in the dark, without waking. You adjust it. Covers up, covers off. One leg free. An arm across the edge. No thermostat. No numbers. Just a body making very small corrections to a gradient it can feel. It has been doing this since your first night on Earth. Watch a sleeping toddler sometime. They sprawl, arms flung wide, blanket kicked to the floor, 1 foot hanging over the edge of the mattress. Parents call it restlessness and tuck them back in. It is not restlessness. A small body carries more surface for its mass and sheds heat accordingly. And that sprawl is the most efficient posture available for doing it. The behavior arrives before language does. Before anyone could have taught it. It was never a habit. It was equipment. You are not the only animal running this. A rabbit sheds heat through its ears, laced with vessels that open wide when it overheats. An elephant does the same on a vastly larger scale. Its ears a well-studied cooling surface. A rat lets heat go through its bare tail. A dog's paw pads are glabrous, like your souls. Different creatures, different hardware, one identical problem. A warm interior that needs somewhere to put the excess. Your foot in the cool air is a very old solution, wearing your shape. The advice about a cool bedroom keeps surviving, and the reason is not toughness or discipline. A cool room is simply a room that will accept what you have to hand it. It is the destination, the thing without which the whole arrangement inside you has nowhere to finish. The setting on the wall was never there to make you cold. It was there so your heat has somewhere to be, all night, without ever asking you for anything. Bedding matters for the same unglamorous reason. Every fabric decides how easily warmth and moisture move through it. Loose, breathable material lets both pass. Heavy or sealed material holds them against you, and the small climate under your covers warms until it stops taking anything more. When that pocket saturates, your core has nowhere left to send its heat. So the sheet is not decoration, and not comfort exactly. It is the last gate between you and the room. The warm bath still works, which never stops sounding backwards. You know why by now. Warm water opens the shunts at your surface, and when you step out, the vessels stay open and the core drops faster than it would have alone. The effect is modest and real. You warm the outside to cool the inside. The trick has been sitting in ordinary evenings for as long as there have been baths, waiting for someone to notice what it was doing. Socks. 2. Small studies of wearing socks to bed point the same direction, and the mechanism is the one you now know by heart. Warm the feet. Open the vessels. Let the core fall. It is the least sophisticated intervention in all of sleep science, and one of the more reliable. There is something worth sitting with in that. The body was never waiting for a device or a discipline. It was waiting for the heat to be allowed out, by whatever means happened to be nearby. It is worth saying who this gets harder for. With age, the ability to open those distal vessels tends to grow less responsive, and cold hands and feet at bedtime become more common, alongside a longer wait for sleep. The person lying there is not failing at rest. The valves are simply slower. Whatever anyone has told them about their attitude towards sleep, this part was never a matter of attitude. Think of the nights that never quite worked. A close room. Air that felt used. Sheets that would not cool no matter which part of them you moved to. Sleep arriving in pieces and leaving again. And dreams that came out tangled and strange. You have carried those nights around ever since as evidence about yourself. They were never that. They were a room, and a night, and a thing you were holding that had nowhere to go. The unfairness of those nights had a location, and it was the hours you were dreaming. That is when the guard is set down. You heard why, earlier tonight. In a room that takes your heat, it costs nothing at all. In a room that will not, the dreaming happens out in the open, with nothing between you and the air. So the strangeness of those dreams had an address after all. It was the room. So the shape of tonight can be said simply now. Every stuffy, half-slept night you ever blamed yourself for. You were holding something you had no way to hand off, in a room that had stopped accepting it. That is the whole of it. Not a weakness you never fixed. Not the thing you quietly suspected about yourself at 4 a.m. A warm body, and a room that was already full. Nothing about that was you. All those nights. The kicking and the flipping and the foot going out into the dark. You read it. If you read it at all. As not sleeping well. As a thing your body was doing to you. It is worth noticing how organized it was. Nothing about it was random. Every one of those movements went to the same few square inches of skin, and went there without ever waking you. And you are not the only one being asked. Right now, in every dark bedroom on this side of the planet, cores are sliding down. Vessels are opening at hands and feet, and small, warm, sensitive cells behind millions of faces are reading that fall and taking it as permission. The most private minutes of your life are running on machinery that every human being carries. What you do in the dark alone is the one thing it has never been. Some bodies have to ask harder than others. The flush that wakes someone at 3 a.m. The fever that has you shivering under blankets in a warm room. The summer night in a flat that will not cool. None of those are private failings. They are the same conversation, held on harder terms. Everyone in this is asking the room the same question. Some are just asking it into a room that answers more slowly. Think of how many nights you do not remember. Thousands of them. Ordinary, unremarkable, gone. And on every single one, this ran. The vessels opened. The number came down. The room took what you gave it, and you never knew a thing about it. You only remember the nights it did not work. The rest of them your body handled quietly, and asked you for nothing, and did not mention it in the morning. And the room never once refused you out of judgment. Air does not assess anyone. It either has space for what you are handing it, or it does not. And that is the entire extent of its opinion about your life. On the good nights, it simply had room. On the bad ones, it was already full. Nothing in that exchange was ever about you, which is a strange kind of mercy, and it has been there every night, which means the room was always half of it. Not scenery, not preference, a partner in a transaction your body cannot complete on its own. The air near you carries away what your blood brings to the surface. And it does this all night. asking nothing. You have been in a relationship with the air around your bed since the night you were born. Tonight, it is already accepting what you offer. At your hands, your face, the 1 foot in the dark. And it is happening while you listen to this sentence. Not later. Not once you have settled properly. Not after you have got the room right. Now, at your palms, at your face, at whatever edge of you the air has found. You have not been waiting for the night to start. You have been inside it since you lay down, and it has been getting on with things the whole time, a few inches from a mind that was trying very hard to help. Notice how ordinary you are in this, and how good that is. The foot out from under the blanket is not a quirk of yours. It is a species doing one thing. In every language, in every climate, in beds and hammocks and on floors. People are sliding a foot into cool air tonight without knowing why, and their bodies are being understood by the dark anyway. You have been part of something the whole time, and nobody mentioned it. So let it be simple now. You are warm. The room is cooler. Somewhere at your edges. That difference is being quietly resolved. The way it has been resolved every night you have ever slept through, and every night you have not. Nothing about you needs correcting for this to work. The arrangement is already old, already running, already holding you. It has never once needed you to understand it. You were never fighting yourself in the dark. All those years, all that turning over, the foot searching for the cool side, that was not a body at war with you. It was a body asking, gently and without words, for somewhere to put what it was carrying. Tonight, the room is answering. Let it take the heat, and the weight, and the day. You are not strange, and you were never alone in here. You were only ever warm, and looking for somewhere to set it down. The answer turned out to be smaller and kinder than the question. A foot in cool air is a radiator uncovered. The same glabrous skin that made warm feet a reliable way to fall asleep faster. Because the warmth you feel there is heat already leaving. A century ago, von Economo found sleep had an address in a fingertip of tissue at the front of the hypothalamus. And the cells living there turned out to be thermometers. The night you have had your whole life was never about willpower. It was about heat, and whether it had anywhere to go. You came in with a habit you had never explained to anyone. You leave knowing it was your body, doing something intelligent, in a language older than you, and doing it in every bed on earth tonight. If knowing what your thermostat has been doing all these years makes the next stuffy, restless night feel less like your fault, then subscribing keeps these hours reaching the people lying awake, blaming themselves for the room. Nothing else is needed from you tonight. The rest of this is just letting go. Somewhere at the edges of you, warmth is leaving, off the palm, off the face, off the 1 foot in the cool dark, and the air is taking all of it without a word. It is happening now, while you do nothing. Let your whole self loosen into that slow handing over, The way heat does not struggle to leave. It simply goes where there is room. Let the day go the same way. It was never yours to hold on to. The warmth keeps drifting off you. The air keeps accepting it. And none of it needs supervising. There is nothing left to adjust. Down goes the number your body guarded all day. And you go with it. Not falling, just cooling. Until sleep is what is left. The Deep Sleep Guided by Mind Science playlist has been sitting with questions like this one. The ordinary things your body does in the dark that nobody ever explained. The next video carries this further, waiting whenever you are ready. Wherever the cool air touches you now, let it stay. You need not move again tonight. Restless one, nothing about you was ever wrong. You were only warm, and the room is taking it. Deep sleep, guided by what your mind already knew how to ask for. Good night.